Good to go. There you go. Hi, everybody. I'm Marilyn London, and I am a board member and membership chairman of the Friends of the Sterling Road Library. And I would like to welcome you all again to Shelly's program. I'm looking at the names and I seem to know all of the names, so I don't think there are any guests here tonight, but in case there are, first of all, I want to thank the Friends for making this possible. Without your support, we would not be able to have Shelly and all the other wonderful facilitators that we do have. And if you are a guest, we certainly welcome you. If you like the program tonight, please look and check us out at www.stirlingfriends.org, and hopefully you will become a friend as well. In addition to tonight, just very briefly, I'm hoping that you're all getting your newsletters. If you are not, please contact me so that we can make sure that you get all of the programs that we are sponsoring, because they really are wonderful. We are now back in person for the most part, and just a few things to tell you. We do have other movie programs now. Not like this, but we do have movie programs in person. On Monday, the Fabelmans will be shown at the library. And on Tuesday, we're back in Cinema Paradiso in person. And we're showing The Quiet Girl, which is one of the Academy Award films for the Oscars. In addition to that, book club will be next Tuesday on the 14th. And then the other thing we're having on the 14th, which is fascinating, is Marjorie Marcus will be speaking to us about the banned books in Florida, this great state we're in, that are banning all these books. Marjorie Marcus has spoken to us before, and it was about banned books, but this time she is zeroing in on how it's affecting us in Florida. And if DeSantis does what he wants to do, it's going to be beyond Florida. So I suggest we all listen. And that takes us right up to when we next see Shelly at Viva la Libertad, or however you say it. I guess it's Italian. My French is okay. Other than that, not so good. So without further ado, I will introduce Shelly. You all know his CV. You all know how wonderful he is and how lucky we are to have him. And he will now tell us about how we think we have immigration problems. It's universal. Shelly, it's up to all yours. And everybody, mute. Wait a minute, please mute. Oh, and book club, thank you. Book club also is on the 14th, the same day as Marjorie Marcus. It's a very busy day. So the afternoon will be book club, and Violetta is the book. Then it is by what's her name, Isabel Allende, and then would be Marjorie Marcus. But wait a minute, that's not until the 20. Yeah, the book club is not until the 21st, which is the day before Shelly's program. So I think I've got it all. Sorry, Shelly. And
that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, and thank you all for coming this evening. It's nice to see you. This film is I've shown this film over the years. It's from 2011, and it is still as timely and timeless as it was then. Terrafirma is written and directed by a young man. He's not a young man now, he's in his 40s or 50s, Emanuele Criolisa. He was born in Rome, and he studied film at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. When he was a senior, he was actually graduate school there. A producer was attracted to him by his work and did work with him over a couple of years, developing short films and developing scripts. His film debut was an Italian film. He likes to work in Italian, although he has done a lot of work here in the States. But his first film was entitled Respiro from 2002. and it won the Critics Week Grand Prize. First film, Critics Week Grand Prize at the Cannes Film Festival, and was nominated as Best Film at the Italian Academy Awards. Then he went on to his second feature, which was entitled Nuovo Mundo, but here in the United States, it was called The Golden Door. The Golden Door, and it premiered at the Venice Film Festival in 2006, winning 6 awards, two for best film at the Venice Film Festival, 2 special awards, and was nominated for 11 David di Donatello or the Italian Academy Awards, 11, of which wound up winning 3, but it was also Italy's submission for the Oscars in 2007. Terrafirma was his fourth feature film, and was also Italy's entry for the Oscar in 2012. His latest film is entitled Limoncita. Limoncita. It hasn't opened in the US yet. It just recently opened in Italy. It deals with the relationship between a transgender boy and his mother, and it stars Penelope Cruz in Italian. Crealese said the film was inspired by his own experience. He came out in 2022 as being a trans man, being born a girl, but he transgendered as a very young man before he was 20. He also said that after coming out in his early 20s, he came to New York and entered NYU, which he said changed his life and gave him the ability to express himself through his work. Terrafirma was also the 3rd film he shot on the island of Lampedusa, off the coast of Sicily, where the tourist trade has virtually overtaken the fishing business. Involving and thematically rich, Terrafirma, as I said, is timely and timeless. It's a beautiful, engrossing film with heart, soul, humor, and a powerful, very powerful humanistic vision. It casts a critical eye on one of the most emotional contemporary struggles of our time, that of the question of illegal immigrants and our national and personal responses to their presence and their role. It cannot be denied. Films, most notably films influenced by neorealism, and we've discussed neorealism before, have an incredible ability to address that most basic human right to live with dignity. And Terrafirma embraces this challenge. The ravishing Terrafirma sinks its roots deep into neorealism, only with an overlay of magic realism. There are certain moments that feel like magic realism in the film. It's a story that involves constant conflict, constant battles. There's a generational battle between a grandfather, his son, and a grandson over the family fishing boat and business, between the grandson and his mother over his future, between the business of tourism and the island itself involved in the fishing business, and the problem also of illegal immigration. There is the conflict between the Italian Coast Guard and the older generation of fishermen over the practice of the traditional law of the sea, as it is discussed in the film. There is also the conflict between the local police and the fishermen themselves. Whatever its residents may think of it, Linosa, as it is called in the film, still draws 2 vastly different kinds of visitors: wealthy Italian tourists who come for its beautiful beaches, and the illegal African immigrants passing through on their way to the mainland. Crealese slowly adds new layers to his story. Eventually, it becomes clear that Linosa's problems are part of a widespread economic and political shift. And in Terrafirma, the small island comes close to serving as a powerful analogy for a modern Europe itself, where the combination of faltering economies and a distrust of immigrants has the potential of bringing further ruin to an already beleaguered continent. The plight of the Africans presents a moral dilemma that could hardly be more timely. no matter where it is. The dispossessed must choose between turning on each other or standing together against those who would keep them down or out. It is especially a new layer has been added onto the whole immigrant crisis with the Ukraine war. As we've witnessed, over 1 million or more Ukrainian residents have gone through into Europe, have filtered into Europe, and are really displaced people. Ecstatic imagery in this film turns everyday activities and furtive acts like tending a rotting boat, beating desperate refugees away from a tiny vessel, the tender ablutions of those same refugees on the shore into a theater of danger, cruelty, and sensual delight. In the movie's opening scenes on the fishing boat, we first see Filippo silhouetted against the waning light. He's doing a jig up and down out of sheer joy on the boat at being alive. At the close of this film, a boy entering manhood will chug out to sea in a different boat, carrying precious cargo. He's no more than a pinprick on the vast expanse of a night black ocean. And we don't know where he's going, only that this act of expiation may ferry his passengers into their future and carry him on to his own. We first become involved in the life of the island. Ernesto's boat breaks down and is dry docked. Nino tries to convince him, his son Nino tries to convince him to sell it, but Ernesto is steadfast, even refusing to go to the mainland for treatment. He then looks like a mythic god, a Poseidon in his workshop, a clear representation of the men who went to sea, helped to raise their families and build an island, and how that part of the island society is fading away due to dwindling catches of fish, due to the new impositions against the law of the sea that these men want to follow. We see the arguments between the young and the old. We see how the oceans have been impacted in the very opening of the film, when that little fish swims up to that net and it's pulled onto the boat with the detritus that's been left there. We see environmental impact. Following the memorial for Ernesto's dead son and the other men lost at sea, his daughter-in-law, the widow Giulietta, who sees the writing on the wall, literally, and yearns for escape in the mainland and a better future for Filippo, as she rips the wallpaper from the wall, the handwriting off the wall, and fixes up their home for young tourists, 3 of which will agree to stay there while she and Filippo move into the garage. And then Ernesto becomes the catalyst for all that follows by adhering to the law of the sea, picking up the Africans, saving Sarah's life before they might drown, Sarah and her son, and is enraged by the government's efforts to shut down the ancient fishing operation that has provided for his family for decades by having his boat impounded. He and Filippo bring Sarah to Giulietta. After she delivers Sarah's baby, a precarious bond will form between the wary Giulietta and the desperate young mother. This sets off a deep wave of social, moral, and emotional reflection within the film, conflicts, and a recalibration of for what certain people will do at the outcome for all involved. And Giulietta was reluctant to take Sarah in at first. Her fear of the other finally will turn to respect and love by the end. How she holds the baby to calm her, and Sarah tells her she smells your hands because she was the one to deliver her. She was the first to hold her. There is another wonderful scene when Sarah and her son and Filippo and Giulietta are all caught in the glow of that globe. It sort of leans towards that magical realism, as I said, but then comes back to reality. And Sarah describes her journey from Ethiopia across a continent and the sea to be reunited with her husband. I will get further into that in a moment. We see the hot-headed Filippo missing his father and somewhat a rudderless human being, caught up in constant conflict, fighting with the other young men on the island when Nino gives him the motor scooter. While he's also trying to become a part of the tourist world, trying to connect with them, working for his uncle Nino, who realizes that this is the island's future, that tourism is the island's future. And we see another incredible image when all of these people form that pyramid on that boat. The pyramid of privilege, in contrast to the immigrants that will be arriving. The tourist world, okay, yes, we have that. One of the most frightful scenes occurs when Sarah's son tries to smother his sister. And Sarah tells Julieta what it's all about, that she was raped, when he said, she's not my sister. And another horror is revealed for these women who have to travel across the continent to get to Europe and to get to their husbands, to get to their families, if they have them here. And with her confession, she also tells Julieta that she named her daughter after her. It is a silent and touching moment. And then when Filippo takes the girl out on the boat at night, his guest out on the boat at night, they become surrounded by those Africans in the water, desperately trying to be saved, trying to save themselves, contrasted with the next morning when they're waking up on the beach. And finally, there are those tourists who run to help them, who realize their responsibility in a way. And finally, our Filippo, in one split second, takes charge after the failed attempt to get Sarah out, the first failed attempt, in a gutsy, much needed call to action for him, which, like so much else in this very, very insightful film, proves to be a very apt commentary on our better angels, on the capacity of being human in the right way, Creolis is a sentimentalist at heart. All his films have a sentimental streak in them, but it's a fine one. It's a good one. And his compassion for the wretched of the earth is thrillingly amped up by this film's ecstatic imagery. I mean, the imagery is incredible. There are too many scenes to mention. But like Vittorio De Sica, Roberto Rossellini, and other great neorealist directors before him, he turns all these everyday activities into this wonderful theater that we witness throughout the film. It is neorealistic at heart. The music score also serves to enhance the shifting tones of the story as it moves along. It's a the music feels like it comes from this place. Filippo Puccillo as Filippo, the young man, was discovered by the director on Lampedusa. He was a young boy. And when Creolis was making his first film in 2002, he was a little kid. And he spotted him, and he was wild. He was a wild kid. And he put him into his film Respiro. And he wound up winning a Young Actors Award for his performance. I highly recommend the film, by the way. He also appeared in another film by Dominic Creolisi some years later, 10 years later, in The Golden Door, concerning the journey of Italian immigrants to America at the beginning of the 20th century. As Filippo, we watch him in this film, growing into a man, a conflicted soul who finally becomes that man at the end of the film. Mimo Cuticchio, as Ernesto, has been acting since 1984 and has appeared in many, many Italian films, but I must note he did appear in an American film when Francis Ford Coppola spotted him in one of the Italian films and put him into Godfather 3. He appeared in Godfather 3. Donatella Finocchiaro as Giulietta is an award-winning actress who's appeared in over 70 films since her breakout role in 2002, for which she won a Golden Globe Andrea, which was the true story of a mobster's wife. And Timothy, who I especially call out in this film, who plays Sarah, the beautiful Timothy, was one of only, this is a true story, was one of only 5 survivors on a boatload of 70 immigrants that washed up on the Lampedusa shore while the director was working on the treatment for this film. While he was working on the treatment on Lampedusa, this event occurred, and he met Timothy, and he said he really felt for her and her situation and insisted she be in the film, and she agreed. Thankfully, she agreed. In 2006, just to predate the film, many African immigrants were paying people smugglers in Libya to help get them to Lampedusa by boat. On arrival, most were then transferred by the Italian government to reception centers on the mainland Italy. Many were then released because the deportation orders were not enforced. In 2009, the overcrowded conditions at Lampedusa's temporary immigrant reception center came under criticism by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. The unit was originally built for a maximum capacity of 850 people. It was reported to be housing nearly 2,000 in 2009. A significant number of people were sleeping outdoors under plastic sheeting. A fire that started during an inmate riot destroyed a large portion of the holding facility in February of 2009. In 2011, many more immigrants to Lampedusa during the rebellion in Tunisia and Libya brought them by May. More than 35,000 immigrants had arrived on Lampedusa from Tunisia and Libya. By the end of August that same year, 2011, 48,000 more had arrived in a facility that can only house 850 people. Most were young males in their 20s and 30s. The situation has caused division within the EU. The arrivals as economic migrants rather than refugees in fear of persecution. The Libyan ambassador to Italy stated that Gaddafi, at that time, Gaddafi was still alive, and this was one of the reasons they took him apart in the end, physically and literally. Gaddafi controlled illegal immigration to meet his goals. As he stated, he wanted to turn Lampedusa black with Africans. He wanted to send as many as could go, but he wasn't providing their transportation, as you saw in the film. Since 2011, it has still been a terrible crisis, most being curtailed from Italy and washing up on Greek shores. It has abated somewhat lately, but it is still a terrible situation to control. This film takes it all into account, and it does it in a touching way. By looking at this one story, the Sarah story, we realize the big story in the film. The cinematography is just stunning. It's just stunning work, as are the performances. I thought the performances also were so well done. I thought that Filippo, really, we see his conflicts, we see what he has to do, his arguments with his mother. We see how the generation his mother belongs to want to get their kids off the island, want to get them an education so that they don't repeat the cycle. It really is an interesting film from a cultural point of view. So now I'd like to open it up for all of you, and I am hoping you have something to say, ask your feelings about the film. So raise your little hands. You can go down to where it says reactions, and you'll see that little hand raised, and you can just hit that and it'll open up on your frame and I'll be able to see it. So, or just raise your hand, go wildly, and I'll see you. So who's going to begin? Who's going to start? Arlette, are you saying yes or you want to start? You got to unmute.
Can you hear
There
me?
you go. Yes.
I can only say, by the time I was through with that film, I was exhausted.
Me too.
Totally. I just sat on the love seat and I really couldn't get up. It just ripped my heart. The acting was superb, yes, but the humanity that finally unfolded at the end, and I'm watching him in the boat, and the light gets smaller and smaller, and I'm waiting for something. You know, are we going to know more? Is it just going to disappear? It was a phenomenal movie. It touched so many bases of humanity. Like you said, you covered the whole thing, really, so I don't need to repeat it. And Filippo was phenomenal. And what a terrible time for him to be in a quandary where his mother just wants the best, like we all want for our children. And we do know how our children react to mothers and fathers at times. So I can only say thank you for presenting this film to us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Aulette. Rachel.
I also loved this movie. I thought it was phenomenal. And the scenes with the two mothers, and it wasn't a lot of talking. Dialogue wasn't needed. You knew what they both felt, and it was expressed beautifully. And I loved the ending, that he just is riding and it's getting dimmer and dimmer.
Mhm.
And my heart was wrenching when he took that tourist on the boat and he's like clubbing all these people, because really he couldn't take all of them anyway. He could not handle that on the boat. So it was, in a way, self-preservation, but to actually see the clubbing and making that choice to do this. And that tourist will never think the same about her life and everything else. That changed her life, you know. And also, I thought it was very symbolic about here on his uncle's boat. They're all piled high on this boat. Somehow it doesn't sink. There's 1 million people on it. But when it comes time for the immigrants to be on a boat, there's not enough boat for them. So it was very symbolic to me about the difference and how they all come together at the end when they are going on the shore and the tourists see them, and it changes everybody at that juncture. So I thought it was an excellent movie, wonderful choice. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rachel. You know, it's you as you're speaking, I'm again seeing it in my head, and I can't help but go back also to the opening of the film with that little fish. It's almost a corollary to the last scene, that little boat going out into the world. It's this little fish, you know, looking at this big net, you know, and wondering, and it's you know, that's who Filippo is in a way, this little fish who's going out into the world. But it also explains part of what's happening, part of why these immigrants are trying to get to Europe. You know, it's the economic situation, is what's happening in the oceans affects the economies. It's part and parcel to it. At this particular time, though, it's not just economic, it's also political, because of what Gaddafi was doing in Libya, you know, and what other dictators were doing in their other countries, and, you know, forcing people to get out, forcing them to have to leave. You know, they needed food. There is hunger. Again, we look at the beginning. This one thing impacts another. The environmental crisis is just as important in affecting these people's lives, and why there is this mass immigration. It is one element of it. So we have to remember that. And yet we see on the island, we see how traditions are being washed away, literally. You know, we see the tradition of, you know, remembering the dead, but we look under the water and we see the detritus. We see the detritus of humanity. There were shoes, You know, there's the statue. We see all of these things that remind us of those who don't make it. You know, when they see the boat at the beginning, we can only imagine what happened that causes damage to Ernesto's boat. You know, it opens up our minds to so much without dialogue, as you said, Rachel, because this is cinema. This is very powerful cinema. I think Realisi is a craftsman with the camera. Okay, so who's next? Linda Paver.
Well, first, I just wanted to say that when it began, I don't know if everybody witnessed this, but I had like no sound. I was looking to see if my my TV or something went out. And then you see all that water and below the ocean, and it was a little eerie. And then you get into the movie. I mean, the stolen bicycle really got to me because I knew how important that was for their survival. And really, this movie is very current, but it shows survival. The survival of the people that live there, where their industry is at risk, where they're fearful that the people coming ashore, the immigrants, are going to be competing for the same jobs or, you know, whatever they have there. The immigration problems that we have today, that movie was very, very current. And I agree with that other lady. I was exhausted at the end of that film. You don't know what to think because you see everybody's point of view.
Yes. Yeah, but that's a terrific comment when you said, you know, aligning it with the bicycle thieves. It's so true, and it shows you the impact that neorealism has on young filmmakers today, especially foreign, you know, those in Europe or in China, you know, around the world. Is the fact that the idea of man's search for dignity, of humanity, and all of these things that occurred in those films. You know, back in 1954, when the last great neorealist film played in Italy, it was called Umberto D. And when it played, the Prime Minister of Italy said, "Enough with these kinds of films. I'm tired of Italy airing its dirty laundry. I'm tired of Italy airing its dirty laundry." He actually said that rather than talking about the plight of mankind. And this too, I imagine he would say that about this film if he had the chance. Thankfully, he doesn't. But you're so right in seeing the linkage of film history within this film itself. Thank you.
And the morality issue, you know.
Yes.
The problems
Yes,
on both sides.
Yeah, they are on both sides. I mean, you can see.
I was very touched when she named the baby for the mother.
Yeah. Yes, it was very touching. Thank you. Clara.
I think it was a wonderful, wonderful movie, and I agree with all what has been said. And I found that there is drama, the drama that every human being has in the movie. Even the little baby that's just born, she also has her drama.
Yes.
And I think it was very, very deep, very touchy.
Yeah, very reflective. That's great. Yes, that's the empathy we feel. That's what the director achieves. Thank you. Ann Kirshner.
Hi. First of all, I want to thank you so much for bringing that film to us, because I certainly didn't know it ever existed, and I never would have watched it without your recommendation. So I thank you very much. The thing that I liked, I think most of all, aside from the fact that the movie was marvelous, the acting was marvelous, the story was what everybody has said. But in the beginning, I thought there was something very special with that silence and the water and the net. And then when he just showed people's feet, the things he tried to bring in there, the garbage from the ocean, He set the pace so beautifully, letting you know what the story was going to be about without saying one word, setting that pace. And then finally you get to see a boat from a distance, but you see ocean, water, 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 and it's endless. And there was something very dramatic and very moving that I think set the pace there. And I like that very much.
That's terrific. That's an awareness of filmmaking. I mean, that's great that you saw all this montage of all of these things, which do add up to telling a story visually. That's terrific. Thank you, Ann. Thank you. Marilyn.
I enjoyed the movie. I'm very grateful that we saw it. I have a question. I imagine that the villages remained at the time of the filming, possibly, but how were they affected by that story?
By the film or
Yes,
the
no,
reality?
the reality of the filming, the action as it was happening on their island. In other words, doing the movie, creating the movie. How did the villagers react to the actors and the type of story that was being told?
Oh, he uses a lot of the villages in the movie. I mean, the fishermen that you
Right.
see in that scene when all the fishermen are together, those are real fishermen.
Right, right.
He has a home on the island. And so he's done, since 2002, he's been making films on the island. And, he goes back every so often. So he's well known on the island. And in fact, Filippo himself comes from that island. And so they're very well aware when he's making a film, they love it. They love it. They're very happy to have him there. They're very happy to do these films. They're very well aware of the situation that's going on and try to be as cooperative as possible. It's very difficult on that island because of that, and it is a sparsely populated island by Italians. It's not a heavily populated island. So it's, just that you see that one town there, that's basically the main town, the main area, but the island is much bigger. And you have these areas where he shot around, where they have the camps for the emigres. But it was a symbiotic relationship between the filmmaking and the villages. Thank you for asking. Yes, Mel.
Yeah, this picture I felt was also the showing of a young man growing up, early adolescence, very timid. They stole his bike, or they stole it from him, and and then of course he has the broad problem with keeping the immigrants out. So the point I'm making, and then at the end, of course, he comes full blown and makes a decision on his own what to do with these immigrants. The other thing I'm always interested in is in the name of the movie, and this one was called Terrafirma. And obviously, when you're talking about terraferma, you're talking about land, getting your feet on the ground. And I think that's what happened. This boy got his feet on the ground and grew up.
That's terrific. Yes, that's great. It's spelled wrong, by the way. Terrafirma would have an I, not an E. But the whole idea, and it's two words, but the whole idea of it, of what you're saying, is so true, because it makes it slippery. It makes that ground slippery. He gets his legs on the sea, but it's the whole idea of the earth itself. But yes, it is getting one's feet on the ground, finding balance in the world, or hopefully seeking balance in the world. That's terrific. Thank you. Jackie and Larry.
We actually really liked it also. I thought, as you said, the cinematography was phenomenal. The lighting was absolutely astounding. The contrast between the light and dark, there were so many contrasts in this movie, and I think that added to it. I also think it was interesting with it being on an island with all the water around it. It had to end the way it did, which was really no ending, because there is no end to this. It's a constant wave of things happening and people moving like that. And I don't think there really is an answer. So it's constant surrounding of it. So I thought it was very well done.
Terrific. No, you're right. It's not an ending. You know what I say? every film has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but not necessarily in that order. And this was a beginning. It was a beginning for Filippo going out into the world. It was a beginning for, it was a continuation for Sarah and her children to hopefully be linked up with her husband on the mainland. You know, so yeah, it was not. And as you say, it is a continuing situation. There is no end. There is no end, and nor should there be in the film. So thank you. Terrific. Marilyn.
I sort of also saw, I'm going through this, thinking it through, but I think I saw it as a generational thing in Italy. The older generation, where they were following the Italian law of the sea, where they were more of the traditionalists, it was life as it was, as opposed to the next generation, where they were wanting the tourists and the party on the boat and getting away because you'll have a better life. And then the contrast, because Filippo is the next generation, and he sort of had the humanity in him of the grandparents' generation. So, and I don't know that it's just in Italy. I see it other places also, where the traditionalists, and then it's all about the money and life, and it's going to come back to the next generation to maybe find a middle, find something more humane, because we don't seem to have the answers to any of these things. And I just saw that return with Filippo, especially at the last scene, saying he does have a heart.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's really, you know, it's always a question of what do we retain and what do we let go away. And I think that's what it is. It's fine. It's that balance. Is, you know, Filippo inherits from his grandfather the humanity, the right. What's the right thing to do? You know, his grandfather sets the example. You know, and that's what's important, and that's what he sees. You know, he witnesses it, and that's why later on, when he's, you know, it seems incongruous, but he has to. You know, he can't take these people on that boat. It's impossible, and they're just coming at him from all directions. And I think it was fear. You know, fear was operating at that point, especially since he had the girl on the boat. So it's understandable. You know, but you see all of these things taking place. I mean, even Nino was seeing, you know, look, he's looking for opportunity. He sees it as if we don't do this, we don't survive staying on the island.
Is still very important, and the people who, like Nina, who are so concerned about there's no right or wrong. It's just, where do we find the happy medium?
Yes, yes. Well, that's the most difficult. That's
Everywhere.
The most difficult.
Everywhere.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Anybody else? Anyone else want to try it in there? I'm open. I'm open to comments. I feel like an auction house. Okay. If nobody's gonna, thank you, Barbara.
I'll just say one thing. I agree with what everybody has already said, but I love the visual imagery of the when they honed in on the boat with all of the crowded immigrants waving, and then the next boat you see full of jammed with people all waving is the tourists. It was just the same image, but the two opposites.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the way he contrasts the scenes is really remarkable. It's exactly right. You know, one is vertical and one is horizontal. You know, almost as if, is that what he was thinking about? Is this vertical rise of the wealth? And here we see the horizontal of them swimming through their lives in the sea. Here they're out on the sea enjoying themselves, and these people are desperately trying to get ashore. I mean, there's so much that can go through your mind at that moment. You're absolutely right. That's where his mind is going as far as the filmmaking is concerned. I think he wants us to think about all these things. He's challenging us to do that. That's great. Anybody else? Anybody? Oh, Wendy, did you have? You got to unmute, Wendy.
What I found, the film was fascinating and deep on so many levels, but at the very end, I thought, well, the mother and the baby and the young adolescent boy, they had hope, they had a future because Filippo was taking them to some safe place. But in the film, when we saw when the grandfather saved several of the men who were trying to get on the, when he saved them, and then they were on land, and in the darkness they ran away. They ran into the darkness only to be captured by the police. So where are their lives going to go?
Well, they would be, they usually, what they try to do is they send them to the mainland, where they will make a judgment. They interview them. They will find out if they're political refugees, economic refugees, why are they there, and hopefully make a judgment to either keep them and help them, provide them with a visa. There is something called the Schengen visa. They're part of the Schengen territories, and the Schengen visa allows you to travel through 23 countries without a passport. You're not required to carry a passport. You have a visa. And they would issue them a visa to hopefully travel somewhere and get work. They'll try and help them get work there. I mean, look, no system is perfect. There's a lot of imperfections, but they do try and help as many as they can. Europe is a little different situation than we are. I mean, we have a wall. I mean, these people are swimming, literally swimming to try and get to a country, and there are islands. That's why Greece is one of the targets, because they have so many islands that they can try and get to. So what becomes of them is some of them will find their way in, some of them will get jobs, some of them hopefully will, work their way up within the system. Others will either be turned back, and who knows what. We know it's not always happy. But thank you for asking. Anybody else? No? Okay, well then.
Shelly, in the chat, Alice wrote, she doesn't have a microphone, but if you want to read the chat, or I could read it for.
Yeah, because I don't have it.
There's a parallel between the tourists gleefully diving off the boat and the Africans jumping out when they spot land. It's the contrast she noticed and wanted to tell you.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Thanks,
Definitely. Yes. Thank you, Alice. Okay, let me get into the next film. This month we're in Italy, so in 2 weeks we are seeing also a very timely film, and you'll understand what I mean when you see it. Viva la libertà, long live freedom. The Italian translation. It is a timely political satire. The failing leader of Italy's opposition party disappears after an especially depressing electoral defeat in Rome. His panicked and political handler replaces him temporarily with his literally crazy identical twin. It sounds familiar. Like an American film. I know we'll discuss that, but it departs from there in many ways. But his identical twin is a philosophy professor whose unstable condition has led to a long stay in a mental institution. This is just the beginning of the film. Can he fill his brother's shoes? And just how will he do it leads to very unpredictable results. It is a great critique on Italian politics, and it offers several pleasurable digs at the establishment. As you can imagine, it also references cinema itself, filmmaking itself. It has a wonderful cast. It stars just a wonderful group of actors. Tony Servillo, who plays both parts, as you can imagine, he is Italy's premier actor as far as I'm concerned. And in this one, he does a fabulous star turn. So I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks for Viva la Libertà, which you can see also on Canopy as usual. So any other questions before we call it an evening? Actually, it's the beginning of the evening before you go off and enjoy your evening.
Just enjoyed it.
Okay, well, thank you very
Thank you.
much. It's always a
Thank you.
pleasure.
You.
I'm
Thank
glad
you.
you enjoyed the
Bye-bye.
film.
Thanks so much.
Thank you,
See
Shelley.
you soon.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Mel.
Shelley.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Shelley.
Bye, Arlette.
Bye.
Another great evening.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely, absolutely. I can't wait for the next one.
I will be out of town for the next one, so Fern will
Oh,
do. Again,
oh, we'll miss you.
Oh, you know what? I better stop the recording.